Welcome back to Nazranis in the City. I'm Josh.
I'm Siraj.
I'm Abhi.
Father Rajiv.
And here we go again.
Back at it again.
How's everybody doing? What's up?
Doing good. Doing good.
Good to hear.
I am stressed. A lot of school.
Ooh,
Lots
comp
of
sci
things.
students, man.
Yep. What about Abhi? How you doing?
I'm doing well. I think just slowly coming into settling with different aspects of life.
Sure.
Got a job, so praise God for that.
Amen, yeah.
The giver of life, the giver of everything.
Ooh. So we're just going to jump into it. Huh? Okay, for sure. Okay, cool. So here's what I want to reflect on today. Today we're going to talk about surrender and the open hands spirituality. Context. So I think this image of having open hands as like the center of our relationship with God, that's been something that's been very close to us as a friend group. It's been something that's close to us as SyroCreatives. Just like this idea, and there's so many words for it, right? Abandonment, open hands, surrender. That's the main idea. And I think, actually, I'll do this first. If you get nothing from this podcast, just go purchase this book, and this book will explain everything. This book really did change my life in a lot of ways.
Can you name the book?
Oh, yeah, because nobody can really see this from here. It's called Into Your Hands, Father. Then the subtitle is called Abandoning Ourselves to the God Who Loves Us by Father Wilfred Stinnison. I found this book at a retreat that I went to, and just really kind of gave me a little bit of structure, I think, to how I'm supposed to live my life with the Lord. And the main argument that Father Stinnison makes at the beginning of the book is that, you know, when we talk about surrender, yeah, like we can kind of talk about it occasionally, right? Like anytime you're confronted with a big decision, sure. And then even when you talk about your own spirituality, you know, you can have a different emphasis or a different central point, like prayer or, you know, social justice. That's pretty big right now. But Father Stinnison says, no, actually the center of our spirituality, of our life with the Lord, is surrender. That's modeled in the life of Jesus. That's modeled in the life of Mary. And then he also makes this great statement that, or he only notes that a couple of saints talk about it, but really I think all the saints kind of have this one thing in common, that they've lived a life of total surrender, right? So it's not just a couple of moments where you have the choice to surrender. No, surrender is always a choice given our freedom, but it is, I think, ultimately what makes us distinctly Christian. And I think I'm thinking about this surrender, open hands thing. What's the word? Like since we've just finished a couple of podcasts on like cultural Catholicism, because I'm trying to think about like what does it really mean to be Christian, and if
like how to fight that cultural Catholicism.
Exactly, like what's really going to make you live differently, right? And I think living a life of surrender is a huge part of that. So I hope that today we can just kind of reflect on that. I have a couple of points I want to make, but yeah, that's kind of it. We're talking about the open hands spirituality. Now, maybe I think this is a good chance for me just to get the ball rolling. I really want to hear from you guys. Like, what have you got from the image? I mean, the image has become so ingrained into our little subculture that it becomes like a joke, right? Like anytime we name a particular desire or something that we want to do, the other person will be like, dude, I think you got to, this is just me, don't take this the wrong way, but I think you got to open your hands just a little, okay?
Yes.
To the point where we can't name any desires, but
like I think the wonderful thing about it is that like I think it's a awesome joke that's, to me at least, is hilarious every time, but at the same time it's never lost its meaning. Right? Because like and I think that's I guess I'll just go into my own little thing of like what it's been. First off, like this whole open hand stuff really hasn't come into my life until probably SyroCreatives started, and it was kind of originated from Josh for me at least. And like it was at our first like team meeting that he kind of like he's mentioning here and there, and then he kind of like said this whole, you know, like open hands thing. And we had our first team meeting at my house. This is the first time like all of us are getting together for the first time physically, and like it was just, you know, when we're kind of sharing our own things, and he was saying this is open hands, you know, like he was going on to his own thing. But from that like moment, like it kind of like changed a lot of how I saw my Christian life in the world, right? Because I think regardless of whether or not you know of open hand spirituality or not, like whenever it gets to the big decisions, you're about to be like, Lord, please, I give this to you. Like, you know, like I think that's not in a like bad way, but like that's what everyone does when they're overwhelmed. They know that when you're like the only person that you can go to is God, because no one else is about to take anything away.
I mean, I don't want to take that for granted though. Like there are
Exactly.
people that probably don't do that. So, and that's what we should do. We should give it to God. Yeah.
Exactly. But the one thing that I didn't, I guess, do is like in like all the small things of just really like just giving it to God. I think in all the day to day struggles and day to day like just everything. Like I've never kind of like, you know, every day, you know, every day we have our things to do. Where when you're a student, you have, you know, all the homework that you have to do, right? And I guess like I slowly just started kind of like welcoming God into that and saying, God, like you're the one that gives me like all the, and like I'm not saying I do this every single day, or I'm not gonna like pretend like I've totally abandoned every single day, every single second, which we should do.
We're learning to do.
Exactly. But I slowly kind of started like welcoming him into my life every day. And before that, I think like, so, you know, I've never actively kind of like said, you know, God, this is your place, and, you know, I want you here and whatnot. But anyways, and that I guess like kind of like relieved me also in the sense of like, and I'll end it here because I can keep going, but end it here. And like, it kind of goes back to our whole other, like what we've discussed previously is, what is the end, a meaning of life? It is resurrection at the end, right? And so I guess starting to surrender all my day-to-day struggles of school, all those worries kind of took a load off my mind and kind of gave me this clarity of, first off, God is the one that provides me all the graces to do everything that I need to do. And I don't know if I can make the connection, but somehow in my head, like it makes sense where by doing it, kind of like makes whatever is in my life in like, you know, temporarily not mean that much. Kind of be like, you know, bro, I'm giving you all the graces for this so that you can come back to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I guess like that's my little spiel.
Yeah. That last point does make sense. I think when we like I've had that image too. When we kind of let go of things, you can actually see it for what it is, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Like I think about like a piece of paper, and like if I'm grasping at the piece of paper, it's crumbled. I can't see it for what it is. But once you let go, it actually becomes a little bit more
better picture.
The image becomes more clear. That makes sense. Before we go into your guys' experience, I realized we actually didn't really kind of name like what it is. So people might be being like, okay, what are you guys talking about? You know, so I just want to make a couple of notes on like what I think is the open hand spirituality. Mind you, this isn't something that's distinctly mine. This is just my way of saying something that the church tradition has always had, this idea of surrender. So the image of the open hands. So like open hands is like this, right? And it really the basic idea is, one, it starts with God, that God is the giver of all gifts. Like literally everything in your life, you can say God has given you. Why I say that? Because he's not just like one figure in your life. He actually, like when we really talk about who God is, he is like literally being itself. You don't exist without God holding you in existence, right? That's pretty existential. You should take a moment to think about that. But I'm just laughing because it's too crazy. But God is literally being itself, and he literally gives you life, right? And then everything after, you know, you coming into being, like God has given everything, right? And it's a beautiful way to kind of see life, that everything is gift. Think about your friends, where you are in your life right now, even your sufferings, God has given to you, right? Now, if God is the giver, then we are recipients, right? We are on the receiving end of life. We are on the receiving end of, you know, like those crosses that we bear, the gifts that he has given. And really there's two ways on how we can kind of approach what God gives. Either we can close our hands to it, that in this way we are not kind of open to receiving from God, or we can open up our hands and receive, right? And I feel like our whole life, of faith is a gradual learning to go from like closed hands to open hands.
And this is exactly the hand motions he did at that first meeting.
I do this all the time. Anybody who knows me well knows that I love to. I'm like a freaking conductor, bro. But yeah, that's the basic idea. Your whole life is given, and it's really on our parts to
Open up.
receive the gift.
So I remember you going on and on about this open hands. The image is still very clear, open hands. And I remember actually when we were having that gathering at Siraj's house to just this stuck. We had some beautiful sharings, but I think this is something that you shared about in a very personal way that we put forward as an important part of our ministry going forward, to constantly have our hands open to the Lord. And I know just personally, there are certain emojis that I like to
Classic Father
typically use.
Right.
There's my favorite kind of like the smiley face but crying type of thing, and I don't know how they're, but there is an emoji, right? And if you don't use it, start using it, right? I will help you to adapt that open spirituality of open hands, right? But just the two hands, just like this. And honestly, when I do click it and send it, I think about our sharing that we had back then. And it's important. A lot of times I think we want to just be like this, thumbs up, or maybe there's a temptation to kind of have the strong hand, the flex, right? But in our day-to-day, at some point when we're talking to God, if we're texting God, there needs to be a little bit of this, right? There shouldn't always be the flex or it's all good, thumbs up, I mean, hopefully it is good thumbs up, but we need to get to that place. And this has been really helpful for me because this sharing that we had was in my initial part of just coming here to California. So I think a reality is that we want to be comfortable, and comfortable even in terms of our faith and, just going to church and all that. But the reality of that comfort sometimes is your hands are closed, or your hands are kind of like folded. Yeah. But if your hands don't open up every now and then you're not experiencing the life that God really wants to give to you. So
there it is.
Yeah. We need to open up our hands. So yeah, it's just a little thing there.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Acha.
I think if we look at Jesus too, like his eventual unification, actually that's irrelevant, but I guess if we look at how we're able to receive peace and grace and all that, it's through Jesus being uncomfortable, right? And so it's just, once again, it's this whole path of the way to true peace and true joy is the way of the cross, right? And actually I forgot the point I was trying to make.
It's okay.
But receiving the way of the cross, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's something along the lines of where I was going. But
yeah. So I think I can kind of we can kind of have a structure of how we go about this podcast. Sure. And I want to start with closed hands, and then we'll gradually kind of make our way to how we open up our hands. But first, I want to kind of take pause and note that at first our lives are like this. We're living with closed hands. In one sense, we're kind of really afraid of when I think of the closed hands analogy, I think of there was one time where I was first starting to think about this idea, and when I was in St. Paul, and I had to give a men's retreat, and I had to give this talk on a
St. Paul, Minnesota, right?
St. Paul, Minnesota, that's right.
Yeah. Not in St. Paul the Apostle.
Yeah, and I that Raj, keep it real, that didn't make sense. But we're just gonna keep moving forward. So
open hands.
Gotta receive the L's.
That's right. But I've given a talk to these college students, and I'm like, guys, most of the time we live like this, right? And usually alongside living with closed hands, it's usually with the clenched butt. You know, like a lot of people live in fear. Like that's what I think fear feels like, right? It's like this real, exactly. This uptight kind of attitude that we have, usually out of fear, out of anxiety, right? Where we got to really we really feel like we have to take control of everything. And
it's
I think,
sorry, I have to insert a joke here.
Yeah,
maybe it's not funny. I'll take the L, but it's like living in a suit your whole life. Because suits are so okay. Never mind.
Okay, suits are a little constraining. That's true. Sure. Receive the L, no problem. Hey, I mean, you literally just talked about receiving the cross. So.
Hey, you got one more. You want to get it?
There you go.
We're ready. We're ready.
I'm just gonna stop talking.
But yeah, that's why I think people. I think that's the closed hands analogy. It's usually out of this great fear of life itself. I was thinking. Really just before this podcast, I think like right now, I think there are a lot of people who are more afraid of like the future and the unknown and life itself than death. Mm-hmm. I think that's that I kind of realized for myself too, like I'm totally cool with dying, not gonna lie, but I'm more afraid to venture into the unknown. Yeah. And
I think death only becomes a fear when it's the next thing in your life.
Sure.
Because just for context of that, because death is a fear. We can't like say that's not a thing. But like I guess like when I was reading the Time to Die about the monks and stuff, a lot of the monks were scared of death. But the thing is like that's when they're on their deathbed.
Oh sure, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If that's like
it's the next thing. So once again, it's about the future. Like what's right in front of you.
That's a great point because I don't think I'm gonna die tomorrow.
Exactly.
Right.
I think it's also funny because, I was thinking about a friend of ours that was just telling me, and it kind of brought back even like my own mentality on a lot of things in the past, and something I have to actively like go against in the sense of like it's easy to, or oftentimes it's easier, and that's still a step to kind of have open hands to like, yes, like things that we're not necessarily comfortable with, aren't ideal, but we kind of like know what's there, right? So if it's like, whether it's like a next stage of life where it's like, God, like if you want me to leave and like, let's just like go to seminary and be a priest, like I'm fine with that. You just need to tell me, like I'm open to it, like, but the problem is, or like, this job or that job or whatever step it is, like I'm open to receiving what it is. But I think like what I realized in my own life was I was open to receiving whatever that next step was. Like I genuinely did not care what it was. Like I just wanted to like get to that next step, and like, but I was struggling to receive whatever that next step was because I realized like between these like landmarks of your life, there are these like daily moment to moment decisions that you need to be open to.
Yeah.
Right. So like with me in terms of like finding a job, it was like, I was open to literally anything that came my way, but there was so many things right in front of me that I was like not, confronting, of like, am I open to like putting in a little more work with this? Am I open to like waking up a little earlier? Am I open to like these little like day-to-day things, like whatever struggle it is? Am I open to like confronting priorities in my life? Am I open to this? Am I open to like having a more serious prayer life if that comes? And like these different things that I feel like oftentimes we ignore, like, cause we're like, I'll do the craziest thing. I'll go be a martyr in like the Middle East for you, Lord. But like, and we genuinely mean that. Like, it's not, I think oftentimes there's a lot of like good, faithful people that genuinely mean that. And even death, right? The martyrdoms, like they're genuine about that. Like they're willing to die, but it's like when it comes to what's between now and then, those little decisions that have very little glory in them.
Yeah.
There's like that we're not very open to. We're like, Lord, I'll literally do anything for you except getting up out of bed to go do these little things to get there.
I was really thinking about us, like how much of a struggle it is for us to wake up at like 6:30 for prayer. Like I'm totally down to be a martyr in the Middle East, but tomorrow I don't know if I'm going to wake up for my holy hour,
Exactly. And just like on this, like Sean's out back in the back laughing right now because we had a talk yesterday about like, some discernment so that he's got, he has to deal with. And I was just realizing like, that's exactly it. The next step is always like what gives you fear, or like it just kind of like cripples you from actually moving forward with your life. And the thing is like, even like what that next step, like as in, for example, let's say, I'm discerning career. More than likely, I probably even know what the career that God is calling me to, but I don't want to receive it because I know what that's going to entail if I say yes to that in the next few steps. And, once again, it's just like this thing of like the next is what scares us, like the right in front of you.
Right.
Yeah. I forgot what the joke is, so I'm not going to butcher it, but there is this like joke story about like this guy that was like asking God for a sign, and God would send like these numerous things, like just about like just different aspects of his life that he needed to change. And like God would be like, dude, I'm literally telling you what you need to do next. But he was waiting on like this grand thing, but the Lord was like building up to that decision. And like, again, like this, I think that even that idea, just clarifying, like, what does it even mean to be open to the next step? Because again, like I really want to hammer down this idea of like the next step isn't necessarily the big life decision that you'll write about later, or that like you'll tell your kids about. Like it literally could be like, do I need to learn more about this career, or do I need to like if there's a certain area of my spirituality I'm struggling with, do I need to go find somebody to talk to about that? Sure. Do I need to read something on this? Like it doesn't. I think oftentimes, like even with me, like concrete. Sorry, I was really struggling to discern like what career I should go into, and like how much time I should give to ministry, and how much time I should give to work, and which work, and all these different things. And I'd literally taken on like 4 different things that I think it was good. Like we kind of talked about this. I was kind of like in these like various aspects. I was like finishing up my barber's license. I'm finishing up, a degree in like real estate and all these like different things. And I'm still giving time as much as I can to ministry and all these different things. And like, I didn't really feel overwhelmed by it, yet at the same time, there was like this thing of like, Lord, what's the next step? Like what am I supposed to be focusing on? And I realized like, cause I was like, at that point, I didn't have much control over like what I could do next. Like I had no control over the time frame of these things, like when I could complete them and move on to the next step. And then what was it? This like this retreat that, the guys had, we had the fortune of having one of the CFR brothers give us a small retreat on like a little bit of discernment, and just like kind of honestly just that weekend was kind of resting, right? We were really able to come together, I think for the first time since we moved in together, and just like have some time to ourselves and just relax and really talk things through honestly. And I was telling the guys, like I wrote in my journal, and I was kind of at the time doing the consecration to St. Joseph and really reflecting on his open hands. Of just receiving what was to come. And especially because I was facing a lot of like, I wouldn't call it fear, but there was a lot of like, I imagine what St. Joseph must have felt, but obviously to a lesser extent of like, I'm probably going to be a father soon, and like definitely going to be a husband soon. And I don't know like what I'm supposed to do with that. Like I don't have much going for me right now in terms of providing and things. And I had no idea what to do with that. And like, I could just imagine St. Joseph in this position of like literally recognizing he's about to be, the husband of the mother of God and have to provide and all these different things. And just this moment of confrontation where he was like, okay, I can either sit here and like reflect on like the whole rest of my life of like, what kind of father am I going to be? Like, what am I going to do? Like, do I need to do this? Do I need to raise him in this way? How much space should I give him? And all these different things.
Or her.
Yeah, or her. And like, or he could literally do what he did and just been like, well, God told me to go to Egypt right now.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all he knew to do. With the resources he had, he knew he had to go to Egypt. And for me, it was like, okay, what is the only thing that I can really do right now? And I was like, oh, I guess I can like sit down. I don't have control of anything else, and just focus on like learning a little bit more about real estate.
Yeah.
And I wrote that down in my journal. I was like, Lord, I have no way to move forward with these other things. This is the only thing you've put in front of me. And it's not going to lead anywhere, but it's what you've given me right now.
That's right.
Right. And I wrote that down, and I kid you not, that night itself, I got like the appointment to take my exam, which was supposed to be many months out. And if I look at the processing times, like right now, it's still many months out. Somehow somebody canceled their exam slot, and I got it that week. And I was able to start and then immediately got the job.
Wow.
And it was incredible. It was incredible because it was like, that's not going to happen all the time for all of us, right? It doesn't happen even all the time for me. But that was just like one concrete moment of like, I mean, I've been putting this in front of you for a while. Like this was right there. And yeah, I might not have given it to you immediately, but you just needed to make this one concrete step. Did by making this decision you become some like big real estate tycoon and figure out like everything with ministry? Like no, like even like recently I've that's still a struggle for me. Is like well, how much time should I give to ministry and stuff? But it was the only next step I could take, and I had to receive that. And like yeah, the reason I share that is because I really think that needs to be understood, that we can't put this open hands thing in like this grand picture of things, and like we never look at day to day like what is it the Lord is asking us to do, because like even those things, because I think sometimes we become afraid, we almost become closed hands to open hands, like we're attached to being detached.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You know, because we're like, oh man, if I make this decision right now, am I like closing my hands, bro?
Yeah.
We're just like,
You can't take it so seriously that you become totally indifferent to anything, that you actually don't do anything.
Like you're just sitting there and like, no, that's not receiving either. It's always active reception, right? And I think to really understand that each moment you're kind of asked to receive something in an active way, to call upon what's already being given to you. And sometimes that means rest, but sometimes that means like getting up and doing your work, making a phone call, sending out an email, like whatever it takes. And to really be able to receive that as well, moment to moment, to like not sit around and be like, Lord, I'm willing to take on anything, but you just got to tell me. Like he is never hiding information from you that you need at the moment. And I think like I would oftentimes forget that, but that is like 100% fact. If you believe in the gospel, God does not hide something from you that you need to know at that moment. So like, yeah.
If I could just share, just hearing your personal experience, I remember when I was just beginning to really seriously discern priesthood. I was still in college, and totally willing to open up my hands in the future of being a priest, but there were still a lot of day-to-day struggles in coming to acceptance of this. And I was just driving. I think I was driving home after I was a commuter, and this song came up on the radio. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Francesca Battistelli. She's a Christian artist, and she's got this great song. It's called "Free to Be Me," and one of the lines is, "I'm letting go of a life that I had, of my dreams," and it just goes on, and it feels like this is what it's meant to be. Like the whole song, essentially, she's speaking about letting go. I'm letting go because I've had a dream of this career and these aspirations, but I'm allowing myself now fully to be me. I'm free to be me because I've let go. I've let go. I've opened my hands, and I literally actually just kind of stopped the car and I just began to weep because I was like, I'm ready to let go. And I kind of had this image that she was painting in this song of, I'm willing to let go. And I kind of imagine like somehow I fell into this pit, and just falling, and I don't really know where the end is. And I'm willing to do that, but in kind of the weeping of just reflecting on this song that I've let go, I was realizing that she's also saying that like God's there to let you fall. And so it wasn't just me kind of free falling and not knowing when the end is, but there is a rope,
little bungee,
a little rope that's there, and God has put that rope there So though I'm like free falling, I just have to like, you know, slowly just keep going. And I don't exactly know where the destination is, but just take it, you know, in this case, you know, just one by one with my hands. And, you know, I stopped crying and I went home and, you know, took more steps. But I hope that kind of connects. I think it's just important that, yes, we want to open our hands to the Lord, but like literally it doesn't just happen. You know, it's like a continuous motion that we're doing. And God is there to lead us along that way.
Cool. So if I could just make a couple of notes
Yeah.
on your guys' personal experience, 'cause I think this is good to kind of analyze. The first thing is that just to kind of go back to the closed hands mentality or like slightly open hands. There's another book called Poverty of Spirit that I read. Kind of like when I was, you know, as you know, I do research on topics I'm interested, so I read all this stuff and then I try to make my own thoughts. So this guy, J.B. Metz, he's like this one theologian. He makes this point where it's like the Christian actually has two options when it comes to kind of like life itself, right? You can either have that total surrender, poverty of spirit, total open hands, or, you know, the bad fruit of closed hands or not surrendering fully is anxiety. That's the two ends of the spectrum. It's either total poverty of spirit or your life will end up in a kind of anxiety, right? And I kind of see that, like, you can kind of notice how that played out in both of your personal experiences, right? Because you were starting to think like the weight of the decisions that you made started to come up, right? Like you know, I'm about to be a father and everything, right? And then there's temptation to try to figure.
I'm not about to be a father, to be clear.
Yeah. I'm about to be a husband. I might be a father in the future. And the weight of that decision starts to come up, right? And then you start to feel that temptation to figure everything out, right? Yes. Abhi is not a father. You are not the father. But that anxiety is there, right? And what happens? You fully surrender, and there's peace that comes with that. And all of a sudden, you're able to receive kind of like that next steps. Same thing in your life when you figure you're feeling,
I was anxious about being a father.
Yeah, in your sense, yeah. So that's the first thing, and I think I say that to kind of name, like, I think what's going on in a lot of people's lives, where when we feel that we have to grasp at life, trying to take control of everything, it's out of a spirit of anxiety, right?
Just real before you get to the second point, like I have a question. So does that mean? So does that, what this theologian is saying, does that mean there isn't anxiety associated with open hands?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I would say spiritual anxiety, no. Like you're at, you know, there's obviously like the mental health side, which is completely different than the idea of like being in accordance with the will of God.
That's a good distinction. Yeah. Mental health, the mental anxiety, that's one thing. But I think there's obviously a mental aspect of anxiety, but there's also like a deeper problem, right? Because we're fallen. Right. Yeah. Anxiety goes kind of deeper than just the mental.
And we're not separate entities. So
I guess maybe the anxiety, you can put it where it's like, it's either you're open hands and you know you're with God, and so you're falling to something, or you're not and you don't know what the heck you're falling to. And I think when you don't know where you're going, that there's anxiety there. I think maybe that's one way to put it.
I see it as like, I don't know if this will make sense, but I remember back when I used to take math tests and stuff, there was like this feeling of when you're taking a test and like, you know, all the formulas, it's still a lot of work, and it's still like you want to get to the end of the test, but you're kind of getting through the questions, and you're like, you're getting through and you're moving through, and like it's flowing. Whereas like if you haven't prepared for that test at all, like no matter what you do, you're going to be anxious like that whole time. Like even if you get some of them right and stuff like that, I don't know. It was just like brought back this thing to me. Like I feel like in our lives, like we're going to have these like struggles, and like we're going to, you know, have these different moments of like, there will always be confusion, because like we're not, being fallen creatures, we're not completely conformed to the will of God. Like, and I think like our life is constantly, but that's the thing. Like if we were, then we wouldn't necessarily be like in a state of having to actively receive, in a sense. Like I think there is something on our part where there's like this decision. The anxiety oftentimes comes from like not knowing if you're in that active reception. At least for me, like I have to always struggle like with this thing of like, am I grasping at something? It kind of goes to like the thing, what I was saying with, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, but the thing I was saying with like grasping at like the next stage in life,
yeah,
that oftentimes there's that, I'm sorry, we'll go back to the other point and it'll come
if
back.
I can just, you talked about math. I'm just thinking about liturgy, you know,
yeah,
there's anxiety in liturgy in the sense, especially as a priest, right? And you've helped out as a sacristan and stuff, you know, like
especially before that, brothers and sisters, raise your voice and glorify the living God.
So it's not, I mean, God is going to make himself, okay. God is going to make himself present. He's going to show up. He's going to be there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think it's a little healthy to have some anxiety, but not in this opposite sense of like, I have no idea. Like, is God, I have no open hands, right? To some extent, there should be a little bit of
it is. I think
nervousness.
it's an inherent effect of the cross. Like that is what the
Yeah.
cross is.
There's an anxiety too.
Yeah, but yeah, I think the anxiety that you were referring to is a different one.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Kind of like when we, and maybe if I make the second point, that'll kind of help clear up things. Because it's true. You talked a lot about how, the open hand spirituality can be used, or it should be really a huge part of how we discern decisions, right? But it also goes that there has to be, even in saying that, we've assumed a couple of things, right? Because that's not, we don't just receive decisions. There's other things. There's deeper things that we receive, right? Because ultimately the wonderful thing about the open hands image that I like, and I think what's most important about it is that it's a relational image, right? That it gets to the heart that our Christian faith is a relationship between the creator who gives, and the creation who receives, right? So as creation, what else do we receive? We receive love from the creator. We receive, you think about baptism. You didn't claim baptism for yourself. You were baptized. You were given identity as a son or a daughter, right? So all of this, right? It's all kind of trying. What am I trying to say? It gets at this idea that everything that we receive, even in its most external form, like coming to like decisions, discernment, it's all enveloped in relationship with God, right? Yeah. Everything is out of love. Everything is grace. Does that make sense? Like I think that's a huge part. That it's not just like, because sometimes we can like.
It's not just when decisions.
Yeah.
Like God's like, Siraj is going to be a computer science major. Decision sent.
Right.
And then
you're
just like, oh crap! All right, this is what I got to do.
Right. There's something deeper than that, right? Like that He's literally forming you, creating you, recreating you as well. As your beloved son. That's the wonderful, and the whole like receiving the gift, like the gifts aren't just decisions, but like your personality, who you are. You are a gift to yourself. I was just really inspired to tell my 10th graders one time, like none of you are burdens. Okay, you are all gifts to yourselves. You are wonderfully made, and because you recognize yourself as a gift, you are capable of being a gift to others. Right? There's something that you have received, whether or not you realize it, that you can give. And there's this wonderful giving and receiving thing going on there too. Yeah, that's all I really wanted to share. I think that kind of clears up the anxiety thing too, because we're talking about posture of life, right? Mm-hmm. If you do not believe that there is a God who provides, a God who loves you, and who will bring you to your completion, then yes, you will be in an anxious place, feeling that you have to kind of take life for yourself, right? And I think this is what I was thinking about. This is what I kind of like, the big realization that I came to at the retreat a year ago. But when I came to like this deeper, or really, I think it's like that wonderful gift of faith, right? When you really come to realize that God really loves you and that He will really provide for you, and therefore, like, however my life turns out, I'll be okay. In the end, God will bring me to my completion. God will do everything he needs to do with my life, and I'll be okay. And it's all fixed on the fact that I'm in relationship with God. That's what releases me of my anxiety, that deeper anxiety. Obviously, there are anxieties about daily life, you know, and like like what you were saying, like the day-to-days, like the anxieties of the day-to-day decisions, like, okay, how do I keep myself in this relationship with the Lord? How do I continue to actively listen to what he's allowing me to do? But at the end of the day, God will win the victory for me, despite my own failures, despite my own shortcomings, all the above. Yeah. And then just because you gave a song and then you also gave an image. Every time there's a couple of days. Was it last week? This week?
I think it was no. It was at the Holy Communion. It's past that. Wait, was it?
Wait, are we talking about the same thing? I'm talking about playing Free Fallin' by.
Oh, never mind.
Tom
that was
Petty.
this past week. Never mind.
Okay, yeah. Because I don't know. I've been really trying to like I had to reread this book because I need to get back into it. But I think like the one song of that really gets at the heart of the open hand spirituality, this life of abandonment and surrender, is Free Fallin' by Tom Petty. But you got to listen to the cover by John Mayer. It's a beautiful, beautiful song. Siraj and I have been listening to it on our way to work past couple of days. And because I think that's what life is with the Lord. Like it's when you completely abandon, it's like to surrender everything. It's like the equivalent of jumping off of a cliff in faith, right? But it's jumping off of the cliff, knowing that the Father will catch you, like that you're safe, that you're not falling into total annihilation, right? Like it's even that image has a relationality to it, that God will win the victory. And I think the other one thing that's important to say now, and I'm just kind of going down my list here, because I'll say this, because we kind of noted a little bit about closed hands, and then how we learn to open up our hands. It's learning to trust in God's wonderful and relentless love for us, right? That's how you learn to open up your hands, where we really, really do believe that, you know, God will provide, that God has provided, right? You look at your life, you analyze, and you see how much of a gift God has given to you, like in the wholeness of your life. Slowly, we start to surrender more and more and more, right? Not just the bigger decisions that you mentioned, but also the smaller decisions that you mentioned. And like when we're totally free to receive from God, that allows us to live in freedom. Like anything can happen to me, right? Like there's this the prayer of abandonment. I think one of the hardest. So this is a prayer by Blessed Charles de Foucauld,
who will be a saint soon.
Who will be canonized a saint very soon. So I'll just read the first paragraph, right? Father, I abandon myself into your hands. So that's like going down the cliff. Do with me what you will. Ooh, that's a little tough. Whatever you may do, I thank you. That's also tough. And this part always gets me. I am ready for all. I accept all. For the longest time, I was like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Not for this.
I remember just a little testimony on my life. I remember from like a very early part of my life up until honestly very recently, I was very scared of having bad days. I was so scared of having like just like random things happening to me that would end me up in the negative, you know? Like I would always pray for good days, if that makes sense. Like, God, just give me a good day. That's all I need. Don't give me a bad day, please. I beg you. And it really kind of shows me where my heart was. Like, I am not ready for all. I don't accept all, right? So I recently started working at Chick-fil-A. And the past couple of days, when we get to that part of the prayer, I'll be like, I really do accept all. I am ready for all. You can give me the worst day at Chick-fil-A if that's what you want. And then I'll get like really anxious about going to work because I'm like, oh my God, God is going to kill.
Look what I got myself into.
Yeah, that's right. It's not even that God's going to kill me, right? Because I'm totally ready for death. But God's going to like send some random customer that's going to have the most insane Chick-fil-A order that I've ever seen in my life, and I'm not going to know what to do with it. God's going to make me mess up on my frosted lemonade, and I'm not gonna know what to do with it, right? That's what I'm really scared of.
You spill it everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was scared of having a bad day.
Has that happened? No.
No, but I have had, in the last couple of days, I've had bad customers. I've had people. One guy, like I totally messed up this one guy's order. I gave him his coffee, and he was like, "You know what? I don't even want the coffee. You take it back." Totally left me in the dust. And at the end of that experience, I was like, "Huh, that wasn't that bad. Let's keep moving forward." And then there was a couple like bad things that just kept happening to me, but I was like, at the end of the day, I was like, "Oh, this isn't that bad actually." I wonder what that's like. But yeah, and at the end of the day, like slowly, like even surrendering those little moments has been good, and it all kind of leads back to me being like always a deeper sense of conversion. I think that like God really does provide, that He really does give me the strength that I need. That He does provide. Mind you, note, I think it's really interesting and funny that providence and provide are like almost the same word. Something to think about.
Interessante.
Yeah. Sorry, I went all over the place. So, any thoughts or?
There's something I was thinking about.
This is just kind of random, but there's that classic. You were just speaking about a song earlier, John Mayer, right? Or
Tom Petty.
Tom Petty,
covered by John Mayer.
But another classic song that we sing in our community is "I Surrender All."
Oh yeah,
Yeah. And sometimes that surrender part it's not all that appealing, especially when we get that high voice. I surrender.
That's right about all those entities.
But no, when it is sung well, that surrendering can be beautiful, But I think, and I remember hearing this song in particular as a kid, and I was just like, surrendering is just not all that appealing at all, because it's just like this high note that is just impossible. But it can be done, and you just sharing about accepting the possibility of a customer who's going to be a little, rough with you is a step to making that, that kind of permanent posture of ours, surrender. And even I know as a priest too, like sometimes I'm not sure where I am, but I know at least when I was in Houston, I was big about instructing people of how to stand, how to sit, how to hold their hands in Kurbana. Because I think a big part of these postures and the willingness that we have, indicates how open we are. And so, if a kid's going to be folding his hands crossed like this the whole time, and even during the homilies like this, there's not a lot of indication of openness. So
that's a really good
I think it's so and just now even more recently with the we had our couple batches of kids who received their solemn Holy Communion. I just try to keep emphasizing that even if anything you're bored out of your mind, just open yourself up, open that book, or if you're not opening the book, like just have your hands folded like this. I mean, even if our hands are folded like this, it's not necessarily like this, but there's something beautiful in gestures, of just being able to truly just give it, to the Lord, in the particular moment. And I miss, people being able to receive communion on their tongue, because of the pandemic, but still, like, even with your hands like this, how beautiful that the Lord can be placed on your hands. And, so at least whether it be on your tongue or on your hands, but like, can that gesture to the Lord be something permanent? When we go to Chick-fil-A, when we're going to school, when we're sitting at our desk, can we just be like this to the Lord? And it's not necessarily always communion, but we do practice at a very important moment to put our hands like this or our tongue out, and so to get to that place of making this gesture really a part of every day.
I think that's a great point, that like, oftentimes our disposition will manifest in gesture, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're interiorly closed off, you're going to go to mass or Kurbana like this.
Yeah.
But like having like the good disposition will kind of like show, right? But also the opposite is true, right? Where if you, like, and I think that's what you're saying, that if you do the gesture first, it'll help you create that disposition.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
I remember at St. John Vianney Seminary, a lot of priests during their holy hour, they'll pray like this. And I was inspired to do the same when I was there, and that helped me understand that I was on the receiving end of this relationship. Yeah. If there's no other thoughts, there's just one more point that I wanted to make, and this is something that's it's been really, I think it's really important in terms of like the wholeness of the open hand spirituality. Probably the most important part is like how this deepens our relationship to God, right? Ultimately, the open hand spirituality, if we truly understand that we are on the receiving end of life, of gift, whether that's different decisions, our vocation, our circumstance, the wholeness of our life, if we understand that all of it is received, it should render, instill in us a deeper sense of gratitude to the Father. It should always go back into relationship, right? It was super random. I kind of like arrived at this idea when I read like this random poem in my Asian literature studies class. And the poem, it's not Catholic at all, but I think the idea of it is Catholic. It's by this poet named Young Lee, and he's talking about, in the poem, he's kind of like describing the experience of his father removing a splinter from his finger, right? And I didn't post the whole poem on the document that we're looking at here, just the last couple of lines. But like he's very like descriptively kind of talking about how like the father is removing the splinter from his hand, how that plays into like, like he notes how there's this one experience where his wife had a splinter, so he was doing the same for her. And then this is how that poem ends, and I think it gets at the heart of what I'm trying to say. So the father has removed the splinter from his hand, and then these are the last 3 lines of the poem. I did what a child does when he's given something to keep. I kissed my father. And this is actually something that like, so the point being, the father removed the splinter, and then he gave that splinter to his son as a gift. The son receives the gift, and what does he do? He kisses the person who gave him the gift. And that's something that Father Matt always kind of told me in spiritual direction, where what's more important, the gift or the giver of the gift, right? So like you receive your vocation, you receive the decisions, the everyday decisions, you receive your life. And those are all great gifts, but what is greater, that gift or the giver of that gift, right? And I think that's why, and that's the beautiful thing of like, you think about Christmas or your birthday, like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is a great story. For my birthday, this past birthday, Abby got all my friends to get a pair of AirPods for me, right? And the most beautiful thing about that whole experience was, one, I have AirPods now. That's fantastic. But even more important than that, the AirPods were representative of the love that Abby had for me and all my friends too. And that, oh my gosh, I wanted to cry in that moment because I was like, it wasn't that like, I was like, my God, you're so good, I have AirPods. But it was more like, God, you're so good, I'm so loved, And that's what, like, you think about Christmas, you think about your birthday, like when we receive gifts, what does that do? Like the gifts are representative of something greater, right? Gratitude. It instills in us a deeper sense of gratitude. And I think that's the wonderful kind of fruit of relationship with the Lord, that just an overarching sense of gratitude for life. Balthazar says the saint is the one who is grateful for having been loved. Like that's what he says a saint is. Someone who is grateful for having been loved. And I think that's beautiful. And I think I really do strive to live my life like that. And I encourage everybody else to do the same. Yeah. We're kind of at the end of the line here. Any last thoughts?
I think, just on that last point, really stressing that the gratefulness, right? What was the line again? A saint who's...
The saint is someone who is grateful for having been loved.
Yeah. I think oftentimes we see it as the saint is the one who serves the Lord, who has given things to us, and we need to be slaves and give something back.
Yeah. That's right.
Rather than, like you talked about, just, I'm sure in that moment you didn't feel like you owed us something, but rather you did want to pour out your heart for us.
Yeah. There's a difference, right? Like, I'm not in debt.
Yeah.
But I did, it was like this great encouragement within myself to give more, right? Because of what I've received. Yeah.
This is kind of random, but there's a exercise that's done in the Jesus Youth full-timership where we speak about mission for a couple of days, and then the very end is this exercise of you put out your hands and receive whatever it is that is placed in your hand. And always at the end of this exercise, it's cockroaches that are put onto your...
Are you kidding me?
No,
I'm never doing no Jesus Youth full-timership.
This is a secret of the Jesus Youth full-timership, right? But
you're supposed to say this?
But also in Thailand, it's very normal to eat kind of crazy things like cockroaches snakes and all that stuff, right? And so it's placed in your hand, but what you were just saying is, loving the giver, right? And so most of us did it. I did it, right? And it was pretty gross in the moment, but at this time, as we were just kind of sharing, okay, put out the cockroaches idea, but like
I just can't get over it. I'm sorry.
But like still loving God, and that's what the saints are able to do. Still loving God in the midst of just like absolute suffering and will look like so bad, life that just was miserable, but still being able to have their hands and receive it and love the giver, right? And that's the whole point of this exercise. It's not, part of it is you got to be radical, but even if it's something as disgusting as this, like, receive it and don't be afraid to put it into your mouth and consume it.
Wait, did you consume the cockroach?
I did.
Are you kidding me right now?
Dang,
What a wild story.
That's some discernment done from here right there.
But also that's a really good point, that it's not just about being grateful for the gift, the good gifts, but also the gifts that we see don't look so appealing.
Yeah.
Like going all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, can we receive the way of the cross and be grateful for it? That's a tough question, but I think that's the question that the saints have answered really well with their lives, where it's like, Saint Therese is a great example that comes to mind. Her last couple of years was just total suffering, but she only had a smile on her face.
Yeah.
That's big. Cool. All right. As a closing note, like, comment, subscribe, email us at nazranisinthecity@gmail.com. Let us know what you're thinking. We hope you get something from our podcast, and we really want to hear from you.
Eat your daily cockroaches.
That is the message. This is a message.
Be grateful to God for the cockroaches of life.
And eat them. God has gifted them to you.
Amen.
Amen.
Praise be to Jesus Christ.
Now, always, and forever.